Okay, so what steps must a person accomplish to either become certified or respected in your profession?
Ooh. First, that word respected. I'm gonna start there. I can't tell you what to do to be respected in your profession. Like I told you, patients are a challenge. I mean, you're gonna get spit on, you're gonna get laughed at, you're gonna get hit, you're gonna get kicked, all sorts of different things. So with patients being a challenge, I don't know that I can tell you what to do, to be respected. You're not gonna be respected every single day, so don't look for that. Don't look to be respected all the time. You have to render care to these patients with or without the respect that comes with it. So you have to know that ahead of time, just kind of going in, especially in the middle of a pandemic. People are so anxious and so frustrated. Mental illness rates are going up, that type of thing. And so I can't promise you that. There are going to be days you may be kicked, spit, kicked on, spit on, all sorts of stuff. I mean, have things thrown at you. You're not always going to be respected. That's just a fact of the matter, period. Okay, and as far as the steps to become a nurse practitioner, my steps are a little bit different than other people's. I actually started my nursing journey while I was in high school. Like I told you, I'm a bit nerd. So during my senior year of high school, I started LPN school. So I was a licensed practical nurse. But you don't have to, of course, you don't have to do that step. But you do have to become a registered nurse first. So you have to have you can go from an associate's degree to then your bachelor's degree. You have to have your bachelor's degree in nursing at that to become a nurse practitioner. Okay, so that's your BSN. And then to become a nurse practitioner, which is an advanced practice registered nurse, you go from BSN to MSN, which is Bachelor's of Science in Nursing to Master's of Science in Nursing. So those are the steps that you have to take. As long as you do your prerequisites, get through nursing school with a lot of prayer, supplication, a lot of fasting, get through nursing school, finish your BSN, and then you go on, to extend for another, typically it's about 2 years to go from BSN to MSN, between 18 months and 2 years, depending on which program. And of course, they have accelerated programs as well. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to the Imagine Exposure Vodcast, a podcast that our goal is to help the next generation better reverse engineer their career goals. And we have exceptional talent, a woman who's very accomplished in a lot of different regards. This woman has multiple, not only degrees, but also experience in the world of nursing. And I thought she would be a great addition to the podcast, specifically for those who desire to go into nursing. And I think she has a great life story. And so I introduced to you none other than Doctor, even though she would prefer that I call her Kezia, just talk directly to her name. But she is Dr. Kezia Nixon. How you doing, Kezia? Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. Here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and I do apologize. We had some technical difficulties earlier, but we're good to go, and we're about to get started. My question out the gate for all of our guests who come to the podcast is, who are you, and how would you define yourself?
Well, first off, I'm a child of God. That's the first thing I'm going to say. And I am a family nurse practitioner. And a lot of people don't know what a nurse practitioner is. It's an advanced practice registered nurse. And I happen to have my doctorate in nursing practice.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you breaking that down.
No problem.
What would you say, what is your story as it pertains to work and vocation? What's your story?
What's my story? That's a tough question. I'm a third generation nurse. My grandmother was a nurse. My mother was a nurse, and I am, of course, now the third generation nurse. So that is my story from the beginning. Nursing is kind of all I've ever known. So I didn't really have any type of alternative. I don't have fallback plan, which is probably not good, but yeah, I'm a third generation nurse. Nursing is all I've known since I was a child. Even my father is a nurse as well. My mother, my father, my grandmother. Yeah, so I'm a third generation nurse. That's my story. That's my main story there.
Yeah, that's an incredible legacy. What would you say, Kezia, is the best or the biggest, what is the biggest misconception of your job?
The biggest misconception of being a nurse, probably pay. People think nurses make all this money. That's a huge misconception. People are just under this understanding that nurses are balling, that type of thing. That is, if you go into nursing for the money, you're going to be disappointed. I'll just say So that's one thing that's probably the biggest misconception, I would say. Definitely the biggest misconception. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Who would you say are some people in your vocational story which you're most grateful for?
As I stated before, I'm a third generation nurse. So of course I credit my story to my grandmother and my mother. I grew up as a child on the weekends scrubbing her nursing shoes. They don't even wear white shoes anymore. I used to scrub them with white polish. She used to work 12-hour shifts overnight. It's called DePaul Hospital back at home. I used to scrub her shoes at night before she went to work, that type of thing. My grandmother was one of the only Black nurses there, so I wanted her to look the best, to shine the best, to be the best. And so that was a huge part of my story. And then, of course, my mother was also a nurse. So growing up, I mean, single mother, we didn't really have money for, a bunch of books and that type of thing, but we had nursing books. So I've always read her nursing books instead of Dr. Seuss. I just had anatomy and physiology books, that kind of thing. And so that's I credit probably everything to them. And of course, the grace of God, of course. Those are my two main people.
Okay. So this next question is a question that we want to help students to better reverse engineer their journeys. And so what we try to do is ask the question, how did your childhood passions when you were a kid prepare you for your current adult career choice?
Like I said, when I was a child, nursing was kind of all I knew. So when I had my doll babies that I would get once a year for Christmas, I would actually cut them up and do surgeries on them. That was my child. I was a dorky kid, as you can see. I used to do head transplants. I would take the head off a hard body doll and maybe put it on a soft body doll. I would cut open the chest and I would like to sew my dolls up, like do suturing on doll babies and things of that sort. So that was kind of how it got started in my childhood up until now. So it still kind of plays a huge role. I still remember it to this day, matter of fact.
Wow, that's really cool. Because I mean, you don't think they have that connection, but I mean that's really cool because it points to your passion, the things that you desire to see even now. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Next question is, and this is kind of the question we focus on, the economy of words. So how can you kind of say it as succinctly as you can? But how would you explain what you do as a professional in one sentence? Then how would you explain what you do as a professional in one word?
Wow, it's kind of difficult to explain a nurse practitioner in one sentence, but as a nurse practitioner, I would say that I manage the healthcare of both acute and chronic illnesses across the life spectrum because I'm a family nurse practitioner, so I'm from birth to the grave, literally. So yes, I manage both acute and chronic care. And if I want to put it into one word, I would say care. As a nurse practitioner, your job is to care. If I can only put it in one word, that's the word that I would choose.
Care. Awesome. Okay. What would you say? What do you love the most about your job?
Love the most about my job, as I stated, don't go in it for the pay. So it's certainly not that. I would say my work family. That is my reason for, getting up and going to work every day. I look forward to seeing them. They're my girls. I'm not from South Carolina. I'm not from here. I'm originally from Virginia, and I actually moved here from North Dakota. And so my work family is literally all I have here in South Carolina. So I'm very close to them. I love them all very, very much so. I've had doctors that I look like as my old medical director, I look at him literally as a father figure. One of my colleagues, I call my big brother, that type of thing. So my nurses mean everything to me and the staff mean everything to me. Yeah. I spend holidays with them, birthdays with them. We are quite literally a family. And that is one thing that you are sure to get if you go into nursing. You're bound to get a family. You are. Yeah, absolutely.
That's real. I mean, you see it on those doctor shows and things like that, like the ERs and Grey's Anatomy and things like that. But it's cool to know that you guys have, that you have a real family and a real community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Literally, I can remember a day when I broke down on the side of the highway and it was probably 100 or some degrees outside. Literally, it was like in the hundreds. Literally, the secretary on my job got her car and drove out on the highway so that I can get in her car just so I can have some AC to breathe because I was like panicking. I couldn't breathe good, that type of thing. I can remember holidays. Matter of fact, this holiday just passed, Thanksgiving. The nurses that were off, they were off that day. ready to be with their families. Instead of being with their families, they took the time out of their schedule literally to cook a full entire spread of Thanksgiving food for all the nurses and all, physicians and practitioners that were at work that day. That's family, that's blood, that's love. That is love right there, to use your time off away from your family to extend, love to a family member, a fellow nurse. So yeah, we are literally a family, quite literally. Yeah. Yeah. I go to them for everything. Yeah.
What would you say has been the biggest challenge in your work?
Biggest challenge, patience. My patience, actually. Yeah, I would definitely say when you're going into nursing, probably your patients are going to be your biggest challenge. Everybody don't believe this fairy tale, that you see on TV. Oh, patients are so sweet, they're so nice. Of course, you have tons of sweet patients, but then you're going to have those patients that are really going to be a challenge to you. If it's not patients, it's patients' family, especially during, a global pandemic. Everybody wants to be seen first. They're not taking others into consideration. It's all about we're in a world of me, take care of me now. And, can't always work that way, So I would definitely say the patients are the biggest challenge. I love my patients very much, but they're certainly a challenge for me.
Okay, so what steps must a person accomplish to either become certified or respected in your profession?
First, that word respected. I'm gonna start there. I can't tell you what to do to be respected in your profession. Like I told you, patients are a challenge. I mean, you're going to get spit on, you're going to get laughed at, you're going to get hit, you're going to get kicked, all sorts of different things. So with patients being a challenge, I don't know that I can tell you what to do, to be respected. You're not going to be respected every single day. So don't look for that. Don't look to be respected all the time. You have to render care to these patients with or without the respect that comes with it. So you have to know that ahead of time, just kind of going in, especially in the middle of a pandemic. People are so anxious and so frustrated. Mental illness rates are going up, that type of thing. And so I can't promise you that. There are going to be days you may be kicked, kicked on, spit on, all sorts of stuff. I mean, have things thrown at you. You're not always going to be respected. That's just a fact of the matter, period. Okay, and as far as the steps to become a nurse practitioner, my steps are a little bit different than other people's. I actually started my nursing journey while I was in high school. Like I told you, I'm a bit third. So during my senior year of high school, I started LPN school. So I was a licensed practical nurse. But you don't have to, of course, you don't have to do that step. But you do have to become a registered nurse first. So you have to have you can go from associate's degree to then your bachelor's degree. You have to have your bachelor's degree in nursing at that to become a nurse practitioner. Okay, so that's your BSN. And then to become a nurse practitioner, which is an advanced practice registered nurse, you go from BSN to MSN, which is Bachelor's of Science in Nursing to Master's of Science in Nursing. So those are the steps that you have to take. As long as you do your prerequisites, get through nursing school with a lot of prayer, supplication, a lot of fasting, get through nursing school, finish your BSN, and then you go on, to extend for another, typically it's about 2 years to go from BSN to MSN, between 18 months and 2 years, depending on which program. And of course, they have accelerated programs as well. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. This particular question, specifically the goal of this podcast, a lot of our relationships built in different school districts will be communicating to students of color. And often within, I was just speaking as an African American in our own community, we don't have this conversation, I think, nearly enough. But I think it's a very important conversation. And how does a person negotiate salary or the value of their services in your career choice?
As I said, a really great question. When you're going, like I told you, don't go into it for the money, but still at the same time, know your worth. Okay, that's one thing right off the bat. A way to kind of negotiate salary, the first step is to, of course, to research the salary. You can go to different websites, Indeed.com, salary.com, all sorts of things of that sort. There's so many references or resources online that kind of help you through that. Another thing is talk to your peers, talk to your colleagues, other ones, that are already working there, that type of thing, and they can at least give you a baseline understanding of, what this company pays for, that type of thing. Another thing that you can do, as I stated, is salary.com. Indeed.com, there's one more, maybe it's wages.com, I'm not 100% sure. But the biggest thing is to be realistic. When I say to go to your peers, understand that you're not going to make the same rate fresh out of school as somebody that's 5, 10, 12, 20 years, in the game. So the first thing is to be realistic. Be realistic if you're going to be negotiating. Look at what is the salary base pay, especially in what state you live in, what area you're working in, if you're going to be in a rural setting, if you're going to be, in a big city, that type of thing. So you can just do your research for things of that sort, but always start with being realistic. Always, always, always. And be respectful also when you negotiate salary. Always be respectful as well. Yeah.
Okay. Based on what you know now about your vocation, if you could get into a time machine and talk to Kezia as you were in high school or when you were first thinking about becoming a nurse, what advice would you give if you can go back on the first day of the job and talk to your younger self? What advice would you give yourself?
If I could go backwards, I probably wouldn't go to the first day of my job. I would go to before I even started. I would go back to while I was in school. This is something that I'm just being true to you. My biggest thing that I would change, which is the core of your question, the biggest thing that I would change is I would not have taken out so many school loans. And that's something that I'm just being straightforward, honest, 100% transparent with. A lot of young people, especially Blacks, we get so deep in debt, that type of thing. When you're taking out school loans, take only what you need. Okay, research, make sure there's not already grants available, scholarships, that type of thing. Don't go taking all these loans because they're going to want them back at some point. They're going to want them back. Okay. So that's probably the biggest thing that I would change. I would change that for sure. If I could go back in time, if life was only that simple.
Oh, that's real. That's real. Yeah. Wisdom as it pertains to loans, I think that is across the board for a lot of different job choices, career choices, that sort of thing. I think as we mature, we're able to see, okay, this has long-term repercussions. Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you prepare to one day transition from the role that you're in? You're talking about in-game retirement. What is your transition plan?
First of all, as being a nurse, I would say when we say in-game, yes, there will be a retirement, but to me, in my opinion, nursing is more than a profession. It's actually a lifestyle. So once you're a nurse, you're always a nurse, just like with military. Even if you're out of the military, you're always a Marine. You're always in, the Navy, that type of thing. So to me, nursing is a lifestyle. So you're always going to be a nurse. Even people are retired, like your grandmother, that type of thing. You still say, "Oh, my grandma's a nurse," even if you don't work as a nurse. So that's one thing to kind of bear in mind. As far as preparing for retirement, start early. When we say go back to the first day of your job, that's the thing that you should be looking at the first day of your job. When negotiating salary and that type of thing, make sure it's a company that has 401k, and not just 401k, but matches 401k. I don't typically work for anybody that doesn't match 401k, at least up until 5%. Okay, 100% up until 5%. That's one thing to always kind of be cognizant and remember that. Okay, and as far as preparing for my retirement, that's how I prepare for my retirement. When I get paid, I have a certain percentage that goes aside that I don't see. I don't have children, so naturally I put away more than most people because I don't have a family, that type of thing. So I'm able to put away more. Okay, the amount that you put aside, that's between you and your spouse, that type of thing. Just kind of pray about it, that sort of thing. And so that's how I prepare for retirement. I want to live the same lifestyle that I do now up until my retirement. I don't want my lifestyle to diminish or that type of thing. So just always prepare for the future. Always prepare from day one. Think about retirement. Just like when you have a mission, you're already planning for discharge. So that's just something to consider, to bear in mind.
Awesome. Okay, so this is what they're kind of like the essential steps to perform well in your job. I call it the Cultivate countdown. The thought process is a student can look at hopefully one day 100 different career choices, and they can all go to each one and go, okay, this is what someone who's in that career choice actually believes about their career choice, how they prepare to go to work every day. So what would you say are some essential principles to your job?
Principles to my job? Let me see. Always be prepared. Always be a lifelong learner. Do your research. Stay on top of your education. Education is so important when you come to the medical field. So you have to keep up with the latest research, that type of thing. Continuing medical education, that sort of thing. And that's another thing when you're negotiating salary. It's not just salary that you negotiate. You have to negotiate benefits as well. Make sure it's a company that buys into you, that buys into your growth and your education. So seek to work for somebody that has continuing medical education funds kind of set aside for the employee. That's one thing You always want to research, stay up on your research, study, stay abreast of things, stay ahead of the game. That's the major thing. And be encouraged, be positive and be encouraged, especially during a time where people don't really want to go into nursing right now amidst the pandemic. And understandably so, people are choosing other, maybe safer professions, and so the biggest thing is when you're going into work, be encouraged. Okay, we woke up this morning, we made it to this day, that type of thing. Each morning, I have to thank God when I walk into those doors, because not every practitioner, not every physician made it through the pandemic. Not even we did have, ones that died along the way. And so that's the biggest thing, is to be encouraged when you walk through those doors and preparing every single day. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that list. That sums up a whole lot. I know even now in this technological time, how nurses are so important because of what they're doing on a hands-on standpoint, but also even engaging the technology. There's a lot that you guys do that is so neat. Okay, this is the last question. I feel like this has been a great interview. Our last question is, if you had one motivational quote, let's say, for example, we put the Cultivate Countdown and the motivational quote on a meme. And so on your meme, what would you want your motivational quote to
be? What I would want others to know as a motivation, I would say, don't believe people when they tell you the sky's the limit, because you can do so much more. That's the biggest thing I try to point out to young people. Yeah. People always say, oh, the sky's the limit. To me, that's not true. And the Bible said that he can do exceeding and abundantly above more than we could even imagine. We can already see the sky. So he can do above that. Okay. So I don't believe people I tell people, don't believe people when they tell you the sky's the limit. You can do more, actually. Look above the sky. Look above that. Yeah. That would be my words of encouragement, words of knowledge. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Great words to live by, to think on. Great perspective. So those are all our questions. The last but not least, is there anywhere that you would want to direct the viewer to? Is there a website or email or something that you would want to direct the viewer
to? Well, I work for a nonprofit organization aside from nursing. I'm a clinical board director of Nurses with Purpose. If anyone is interested in medical mission trips, maybe you're already a nurse, so you're going into nursing, we're looking at bringing students with us as well. So that would be nurseswithpurpose.org. We're expanding. As you know, I go to Johannesburg, South Africa, twice a year, but now we're expanding it to Ghana, Guatemala. One of our director, actually, our CEO, I apologize, just returned from Kenya. So we just did our first Kenya trip, so that's something to consider as well in the field of nursing. Acts of humanitarianism is very important. It's very important. Yeah. So nurseswithpurpose.org.
That's an incredible vision, to be someone who in your profession cares, but also even go above and beyond and go internationally and care for other people. That's phenomenal. So I do appreciate your time, your expertise, and your wisdom. Kezia, you have a great day. And you be encouraged as well.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.